Hello and welcome to How to Gain Mastery Over Your Emotions. I'm Dr. Mort Orman, your presenter. Just by way of background, I'm an internal medicine physician, an anger elimination expert. I've authored 26 books on how to eliminate anger and stress. I'm also the founder of National Stress Awareness Month, which has been held every April in the US since 1992. Also, I'm a husband, a father, a golfer, and a marathon runner. What you're going to learn today is how to achieve emotions mastery in general and anger mastery in particular. The second thing is we're going to discuss three big myths about our emotions that keep us stuck. And the third part is how you can learn to eliminate most of your anger so you can be happier, healthier, and don't end up alone. And one of my goals today is to show you that it is not that difficult to eliminate most of your unwanted anger or harmful anger. And even if you think it's impossible, it's actually pretty easy to do. And I'm going to show you what it takes. So why focus on emotions mastery? Well, emotions are very important in our lives. It's a big part of being human, and much of our life is dominated by our emotions. Our emotions contribute to our health, our happiness, our success, our family, relationships, can affect our sleep, our peace of mind, our self-confidence. And our emotions can actually damage our kids. So we have to be careful. And the more we understand our emotions, the better off our kids will be. And then why focus on anger? Well, anger is a very common emotion. It's very prevalent. It's also very destructive in many ways. Now, there's sometimes when anger can be beneficial in our lives, but I would say about 90% of the time when we get triggered to be angry, it's often going to cause problems in our relationships or with our health or on our job, career, in our other interpersonal relationships. Anger is also widely misunderstood, which is why it's good to have conversations like this where we can clear out some of the misconceptions. And when you understand anger, you actually will be able to understand all your other emotions. Because if you know how anger works and how anger gets created for human beings, you'll see that it's the same process for all of our other emotions like guilt or anxiety or sadness or worry. They all get created in basically the same way. Now, again, why focus on anger in this particular talk? Because as I said, anger can be very damaging. It can lead to divorces or other relationship failures, whether they're personal relationships, family relationships, or business relationships. It can lead to health problems. As a physician, I saw a lot of people who were very angry who would develop high blood pressure, heart attacks, strokes, immune system problems, which can set you up for all kinds of other conditions. As I mentioned, anger can damage your kids. If you get angry at your kids a lot, you're teaching your kids that's how to function in life. You can lose your job if you don't know how to control your anger. You can not get a promotion or blow up certain deals that might have been beneficial to you or your company. It can affect your sleep and it can affect your self-confidence and self-esteem. So these are all good reasons why it's useful to focus on anger, and the less anger you have in your life in general, the better off you'll be. In order to master any domain of life, whether it's anger or anything else, there are a couple basic things you have to attend to. You have to have accurate understanding of the domain that you're trying to master. You also have to have accurate understandings about human beings if you're trying to master a human domain. You have to question certain mistaken assumptions and beliefs, which may be very popular, and even most experts might believe them, but they could be wrong. Then you have to go out in the world and try to do master the domain, and you get feedback from reality as to how well you're doing, and any new models or theories or strategies that you adopt, how well they're working or not. And then you have to do a lot of practice, very deliberate practice, and you have to keep making corrections as you get the feedback from reality, telling you what's working and what's not. And it usually takes a good bit of time, dedication, and persistence. So we're going to assume that if we're mastering anger, it's going to take most of those things. Now, here are three big myths about our emotions that we're going to cover today. And I'm actually going to debunk these myths for you. So, myth number one is that our emotions are caused by things outside of us. Very popular understanding about emotions. You made me angry. So and so caused me to feel this way. All those kinds of ways of talking and thinking about our emotions. Myth number two, human emotions are very complex, mysterious, and difficult to understand. I'm going to show you today that that's not the case. And myth number three, it's very hard, if not impossible, to have amazing control over your emotions and emotional reactions. Again, I'm going to show you it's not nearly as hard as you think it is. And many people have done it. I've done it, and I've taught other people how to do it. It's really not that difficult. So, by way of a little background on me and my anger situation, as a young man, I had a lot of anger in my 20s and 30s. The picture on the right here of me, my father to the right, and this is me as a teenager. And I had very little understanding or control of my emotions. I really couldn't keep from getting triggered. I couldn't keep from losing my temper. I had a lot of problems in my relationships. Every relationship with a woman failed one after another. And I was constantly having to apologize for my angry outbursts. So I was not particularly happy about the situation. I took up tennis, for example, in my late 20s. And I was literally, I would go screaming and ranting around on the court whenever I would hit a bad shot, just kind of like John McEnroe used to do. And I would upset people playing on either side of me. And I really, again, wasn't happy about it, couldn't control it. And I tried all kinds of things. I tried standard anger management, stress management techniques, but nothing helped. I then started doing personal development work. I spent a couple of years doing that. Eventually, I pieced together some insights from different programs and different people that I studied with. And I finally discovered what the real causes of my anger and other emotions were. And I discovered it wasn't all those other people that I had previously blamed for why I would feel the way I did. It wasn't the external events that I didn't like. It wasn't all those stupid, wrong things that people often did. The anger was coming from me. To be more precise, it was coming from my own brain in ways that I didn't really understand. And I really didn't have any ability to understand because it was all happening invisibly. You can't really see what your brain is doing when you're having an emotion or where you get triggered to have an emotion. But I was able to finally figure it out. And that really opened the door for a major breakthrough in my ability to deal with anger and other emotions. So once I understood where my anger was really coming from, which I'm going to share with you in a few moments, how our brains make us angry, my life changed permanently. I was finally able to step in, do something about my angry reactions, stop them from happening. And I subsequently have had very little anger, anxiety, or stress in my life for the last 40 years. So I discovered the principles I'm going to share with you today over 40 years ago, and I've been using them ever since. I also stopped ruining my relationships. So I'm happy to report my wife and I are about to celebrate our 42nd wedding anniversary. I guarantee you that would not have happened had I not understood what I now understand about anger and other emotions that I'm going to share with you today. So wouldn't you like that kind of anger-free life where, like I've had for the last 40 years, you don't cause a lot of problems with your anger, you don't blow up relationships, you don't damage your kids, you don't have anger-related health consequences and things like that? Wouldn't that be great? Well, my promise to you is you can eliminate most of your unwanted or harmful anger if you update your understandings. And I'm going to help you do that in just a few moments. So again, getting back to the three big myths about our emotions. Myth number one, our emotions are caused by things outside of us. Let's now debunk this myth. So the truth is our emotions are caused by internal processes in our brains. And again, these are invisible, so it's very hard to know what they are unless someone helps you out and helps point them out to you. So what is it that really causes our anger to occur? Well, here's a common situation. You're in a hurry to get somewhere, you have an important meeting to go to, you get stuck in a traffic jam, and it looks like the traffic jam is what's causing your emotional reactions. Well, that's part of the story, but it's not the whole story. Those are just the external causes. For human beings, our situations are a little more complicated. Usually, when we get upset or have emotions, or stress or anything like that, there are both external causes and internal causes. The problem is the internal causes are not really obvious, so you can't see them unless you know what they are. Just to give an example of what I mean by this, we'll use a computer analogy. So just imagine you're sitting in front of your computer and you press the A key on your keyboard and the letter A appears on your screen. And I came along and asked you what caused that to happen? What caused the A to appear on your screen? Well, most people would say that's a silly question. Obviously, it was pressing the A key that caused the A to appear, which is partially true, which is true as far as it goes. But if I asked you, were there any other causes involved, any other things that had to be in place for that to happen, and you thought about it for a minute, you quickly realize, well, yeah, there had to be programs running in the background of my computer that are invisible, but they had to be there. If they aren't there, the A wouldn't appear on the screen. So there has to be an operating system. There has to be some code that's written that tells the computer when the user presses the A key, you put the pixels on the screen in this configuration and not some other configuration. So the question to why did the A appear is partially that there are programs in here. and they have to be there. But we don't see them and we don't really care about them as a user. We don't have to know about them. All we have to care about is whether the A appears on the screen. If you sell computers, build computers, or a computer programmer, you've got to know a lot more about these programs that are invisible. But otherwise, for the average user, we don't have to know anything other than how to press the A key. Well, the same thing happens when you get triggered to have an emotion. When somebody says something or does something and you get angry, there are programs running inside your brain that are actually creating the anger. Without those programs, you don't get the anger. And without the specific lines of code, let's say, for those programs, you don't get the anger. So the big mistake we make in understanding what causes our anger is we think it's a 1-2 process. For example, you see somebody does something that you don't like, somebody says something or forgets to do something, or you see some bad behavior, and then you feel angry. It looks like one directly causes two, and that's all that's involved, what you can see. And that's the mistake that we make. Because anger really is a 1, 2, 3, 4 process. There are actually three causes before you get angry. One is the triggering event, which everybody sees and which you can see. And then causes 2 and 3 are happening in your brain, but they're invisible. And then you get angry, which is the last step in the process, which is number 4. So what are these internal brain steps 2 and 3? Well, let's dive in. Because these steps 2 and 3 happen every time you have any emotion, but particularly if you have anger, they're always there, and they're always sort of similar steps. So you have to understand the brain is this giant filtering machine. It's constantly filtering our views of reality. It can't let all the data, all the information, everything that's happening in the world in because there's just too many data points. And through evolution, thousands and millions of years ago, our brains figured out or evolved to the point where they are constantly reducing the data that's coming in and simplifying it and packaging it for us in a way that we can handle it and make decisions and go through life, stay alive, reproduce the thing that the brain's interested in. So brain's always filtering our reality. It's never telling us the whole truth. It's leaving things out. And sometimes it distorts things. Our brain can make up stuff sometimes. But anyhow, it shows us views of reality, and that's what we think we're seeing actual reality. We're not. We're seeing filtered reality all the time. And when your brain filters reality in certain ways and stacks them on top of each other, you get the emotion that goes along with viewing the world in those particular ways. So for anger, and most emotions, there are generally 3 main filters that cause the emotion to arise. So what are the filters for anger? And I would encourage you to write these down because this information you'll be able to use for the rest of your life from this day forward. You will never be confused about why your anger occurs or what's going on in your brain to produce it. So our brain gives us 3 filters or stories or narratives to view the world through to make us angry. First, it tells us that we're looking out in the world and it tells us something bad or wrong happened. Somebody did something or something did something it shouldn't have done. It was bad and wrong. Somebody was hurt. The second one, somebody was hurt or harmed or negatively impacted by the bad behavior. That's the second filter. And the third filter was whoever did the bad and wrong thing, or whatever did the bad and wrong thing, was usually 100% responsible or to blame. I call that unilateral blame. It's a very narrow focus of blame where you only look at what that person who did the bad thing did, and you don't observe or notice any other causes, even though they might have been there and might have been important. Your brain will cut them out. And so that you only see what the person who did the behavior that you don't like did. So again, if you write these 3 things down, you will always know whenever you get angry, no matter what the precipitating event is, what the trigger is, your brain told you to look at that event in these 3 ways. And when you look at it in these 3 ways and you believe these 3 things, you will get angry. Now, different emotions have different lines of code. So your brain will give you different narratives for anxiety, different narratives for guilt, and whatever. So here's an example of how this works. Two people are standing side by side in a grocery store. And they look down one of the aisles, and they witness a mother haul off and slap her misbehaving child, slaps the child pretty hard. One of those 2 people gets angry at witnessing that. The other doesn't. Maybe has no emotion at all. Why did that happen? Why did the 2 people that saw the same event, the same triggering episode, one got angry, the other didn't? Well, we know why. We know because the one that got angry, their brain told them, look at it this way. Slapping the child is a bad and wrong thing. You shouldn't have done it. The child was hurt or harmed in the moment, physically, and then maybe long term living with a parent who treats them that way and thinks that that's a good way to parent. And who was responsible for slapping the child? Well, the mother was obviously responsible for slapping the child. She didn't have to do that. So when you look at things that way, you get angry. Now, the other person may not have had those same filters. They may have thought that, well, corporal punishment is good. It's healthy for the kid. And they may have said, yeah, well, the kid was temporarily had a little pain from the slap, but in the long run, it's going to be a good thing for the kid. It'll build character. Now, I'm not saying one's right and the other is wrong. I'm just saying you can have people with two different philosophies on how to parent. And the one who saw only the mother as responsible, the second one who didn't get angry when I said, well, the kid was really behaving badly. And if the kid hadn't been behaving so badly, then the mother wouldn't have been triggered to do what she did. So there's different ways to look at the situation. There's always many ways to look at a situation, and some of them will produce anger and some of them won't. So again, if you didn't write it down last time, these are fewer words you have to write. There's only 6 words you have to write down, and you understand the mechanism, the computer program in our brain that produces the emotion of anger. Bad and wrong, negative impacts, unilateral blame. An example from my life, when I was a teenager growing up, I started getting angry at my mother as I was growing up, and I stayed angry at her for over 10 years. This was in high school, I started getting angry at her, and my main complaint was she kept treating me as a child. And I kept pleading with her, arguing with her, fighting with her to stop doing that, but she refused to change. And the more she refused, the angrier I got. And finally, one day, she said something to me it was just enough. I said, that's it. I don't ever want to see you or talk to you again. And I told her that. My father called and he said, well, son, if you're not going to talk to your mother, you're not going to talk to me. So for the next 7 years, I didn't talk to either my mother or father, even though we lived in the same city, only a couple miles apart. I didn't see him. That's how angry I was. And why was I angry at my mother? Because I saw her behavior as being bad and wrong, something she shouldn't be doing. I was feeling negatively impacted by it. And I was blaming her 100% because she could have stopped anytime she wanted to. And I kept begging her to do it and she wouldn't do it. So that anger carried on for a long, long time. I'm happy to report that eventually, when I figured out what was going on, I realized that the anger was really coming from me. It wasn't my mother's fault, actually. And we were able to resolve that. And we had a good relationship from that point forward. Now, anger, again, is a 1, 2, 3, 4 process. And we've looked at number 2, the filtering process. What's the second invisible cause? This, or part 3 in the 1, 2, 3, 4 formula. I call this the automatic, invisible, lightning fast, incontrovertible stamp of truth. So what your brain does, it's a 2-step process. It's like a 1-2 punch, invisible. First, it gives you a bunch of filters, and it doesn't announce the fact that it's filtering anything. It's telling you this is total reality, this is truth, no filtering going on here. You're seeing pure raw truth. And then, in addition to doing that, it then immediately tells you every single thing that I'm showing you here, that way I want you to look at it, is absolutely true. Don't question it. I'm your brain. I wouldn't lie to you. But we all know our brains are constantly lying to us. They're constantly misrepresenting things or leaving things out or distorting things or getting things wrong. But what your brain is doing is telling you, this is true. You can believe this. You can go to the bank 100%. So the second myth, that human emotions are very complex, mysterious, and difficult to understand, is not true. I just showed you human emotions are as simple as 1, 2, 3, 4. And the 2 and 3 are not difficult to understand. There's 3 filters. All you need is 6 words to understand them. And the fact that your brain is telling you those filters are true. Every emotion happens the same way, that just the filters are different on the front end for the different emotions that you experience. But whatever the filters are, if you're anxious, your brain's giving you 3 filters to make you anxious, and then they're telling you these are true. If you're feeling guilty, they're giving you 3 filters and telling you these are true. That's how they work. So these are the first 2 myths that we talked about. Now, the third one is very hard, if not impossible, to control your emotions and your emotional reactions. Well, again, that's not true. If you understand where they're coming from, which most people don't, and of course, if you don't understand these hidden causes, you don't know what they are. It's very hard to get control over your anger. But once you do understand it, it makes it very easy. I put together an 8-session program. It only takes 8 one-hour sessions. I can completely change people and change their relationship to anger so that they go from being very angry and having lots of problems in their lives to hardly having any anger at all by understanding what I taught you here, and also knowing how to figure out when your brain is lying to you and when it's not lying to you, what's true and what's not true. But when you know how to do that, it's easy to eliminate most harmful anger. When you know these internal causes, which you now do, you can win the anger game. And when you do, your relationships will be stronger. Your kids will enjoy being around you more. You'll have fewer sleepless nights. You'll be happier. You'll have less stress. You'll feel better about yourself, and you'll be in control of your anger not the way it is now, where your anger mostly controls you. And the reason why so many people are controlled by their anger today is because they have complete blind spot about these internal causes that we just talked about today. So let me give you a couple examples of people that I've worked with. I've worked with a lot of people over the last 40 years and have been able to give them the same benefits that I've received through understanding how my brain creates anger. So the first one is a married man named Frank. He was retired. He was a restaurant inspector. He had been angry all his life. His mother was very angry. His twin brother was angry. He had other siblings that were angry. And no matter what he tried to do, nothing really helped. He tried getting away geographically from his family, moving away from them, but he still kind of had the anger, carried it with him. And he tried some standard anger management techniques and nothing helped. And then he enrolled in my short anger elimination program. And in just a few short sessions, after he completed the program, he was hardly getting angry anymore. Little things stopped upsetting him that used to bother him. His wife's behavior used to bother him a lot. She was amazed how he changed so rapidly. And he even stopped getting angry on the golf course, which he used to do every time he would hit a bad shot. And what helped him the most was getting the new perspectives on the internal causes of anger that I just shared with you, being able to weaken those stamps of truth so he could question what his brain was telling him was true and figure out what was true and what wasn't, and working on some of his own examples, which we did in the sessions, where he would say, I got angry yesterday because of this, and we would use the model that I just shared with you. And then I would help him understand what was true and what was not true about it. Second person is a man that I worked with well over 30 years ago when I was still practicing medicine. I was doing some stress counseling. He came in, he was a business owner. He had a long history of anger and stress, particularly as his business would go up and down, so would his stress levels. And when he came to see me, he had a very high level of stress at that time. Nothing had helped. He even went to work. He worked with a stress management psychologist who was very well respected. Worked for a couple months, got nowhere. The psychologist said, I can't help you anymore. You got to go see a psychiatrist. He went to a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist kicked him out after 2 sessions, said, you don't have what it takes to succeed in psychotherapy. And then he finally, a friend sent him to me. I started working with him. And after he completed the program, he was finally able to conquer his anger for the first time in his life. Again, his wife and his kids were thrilled. He had fewer conflicts with his employees. And again, the same things helped him. Understanding this model of understanding the internal causes, being able to weaken the stamps of truth and work through his own anger examples in our course of working together. And the last one is a young professional IT executive, single mom, had a special needs daughter who was around 20 at the time. And she was fairly functional, but she still had issues and problems. And the mother had a long history of losing control of her anger. And she called it her rage attacks, where she would just get triggered and rage at her daughter. And nothing had helped her to stop that. She had worked with several anger management therapists. She had tried multiple books and programs. Nothing helped. She heard me talk at an event like this, and she enrolled in my anger program. And very short order, she was finally able to get control of her rage attacks when she understood where they were coming from. She was calmer, more caring, had more caring reactions to her daughter, fewer milder arguments with her boyfriend at the time, and fewer angry reactions at work. And again, the same things helped her understanding the three filters that cause anger, being able to weaken the stamp of truth that her brain was giving her, and working through her own examples. So we've covered a lot of ground today, covered the three big myths, the two invisible internal emotion causes that most people miss, the exact three filters that cause the emotion of anger. And I've just shown you a couple examples of how you can have major improvement in this process. And you don't have to keep suffering. That's the main point of this talk. If you have anger and you think it may be causing trouble or it is causing trouble, you can step in and take control if you understand what's going on and know how to do it. I have a free gift for everybody today. Go to relationshipangercure.com. You can download this free PDF that'll really help if you're having anger issues in your marriage or you've been divorced and you still have leftover anger from the divorce. It'll cover some of the things we've talked about today and explain how you can work with me to get rid of that. And also, if you join the VIP, which I highly recommend you do, I have a VIP program where I have 15 short video lessons on different areas of life, one of which is on anger, but there's 14 other areas of life where I've discovered some hidden truths about life that most people don't understand, and I'm sharing them all with you here in 14 other areas in addition to anger. So I highly recommend you do that. And I thank you for your attention. Hope you've learned some things. Again, I hope you wrote down those three filters that your brain uses to make you angry. If you want to get in touch with me, there's my website, dockorman.com, and my email, doc@dockorman.com. Thank you for your attention, and hopefully this has helped.